Well, let's take you back to Afghanistan now. And tonight, Boris Johnson has said the Taliban's legitimacy will be judged by their commitment to human rights. Perhaps we shouldn't expect too much from them in that regard. The country's new rulers have said they will respect the rights of women within the context of Sharia law. Well, what future for minorities in Afghanistan? The Taliban hold to a strict interpretation of Islamic law and take a dim view of anyone who deviates from it. Apostates, those who reject the faith of their birth, face discrimination and potentially even death. The former Bishop of Rochester is Michael Nazir-Ali. He's worked for years with believers who face persecution and joins me now. Michael Nazir-Ali, so good of you to join us this evening. We appreciate it.
Well, very good to see you.
There can't, frankly, be many Christians in Afghanistan, certainly not compared to your native Pakistan, but there will be other minorities who the Taliban will see effectively as heretics.
Well, there are some Christians, but of course the largest kind of religious minority is the Shia, the Hazara group. But there are Sikhs, there are Hindus, there were Jews, there aren't any left anymore. And the country has a very rich Buddhist heritage. You remember the last time the Taliban were in power, they destroyed the Buddhas of Bamyan. So there is concern for all of that, really.
And we think to events just across the border in Pakistan. I know we've talked about it before. I've been to Mass in Lahore and I've talked to members of that beleaguered Christian community, Karachi as well, I think making up about 2% of the Pakistani population. And it often feels for those people that the full weight of the state is against them. And that, I imagine, is how, if we look back through recent history, how things are likely to be in Afghanistan too.
Oh, it'll be much worse than that. I mean, yes, 2% is the figure the government gives. I think it's much more than that. Yes, I mean, I think this situation should never have occurred. That I quite see why the West needed to withdraw its troops after such a long time in that country, but it should have been made conditional on a comprehensive peace, some kind of government of national unity, and all of that, this unilateral withdrawal has just shot to pieces. The other thing is that the 20 years or so that the West has spent in building civil society, establishing a culturally appropriate form of democracy, much to be admired in some ways, female education, these are not extra to the task of eradicating terrorism, as John Bolton has said today. This is not collateral. This is absolutely integral to eradicating terrorism from both Afghanistan and from certain parts of Pakistan, actually. I mean, already ISIS has a foothold there. And what are we going to do about that? I mean, you know, this should have been, this is well known to those who are in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda will no doubt resurface. The Haqqani group, talking about Pakistan, the Haqqani group and the Pakistan Taliban provided safe havens for the Afghan Taliban. Now there will be quid pro quo. So they will want safe havens in Afghanistan to operate in the rest of the region. I think the implications of all this for the region are very serious for Russia, for the Central Asian republics, for China, of course, and for Pakistan itself.
Bishop, if we can just set the politics, the geopolitics to one side, as a man of faith, is this in any way, are you conflicted at all when you see the opprobrium that is heaped upon the shoulders of the Taliban? I mean, of course you feel they deserve it. Of course, any right-thinking person does. But on one level, they are looking to create a theocracy. They are driven, insofar as you can see what emotions are driving them, by a deep faith. And I just wonder if that leaves people of deep faith like yourself ever so slightly conflicted.
No, not at all, because faith is an essential part of human nature, of course. But like other parts of human nature, take love, for instance, it can go terribly wrong. And I think in this case, it has gone terribly wrong when it results in such evil for people who are defenseless. I mean, the majority of the Afghan population is now vulnerable and defenseless. Well, that can't be right by any measure. I'm, as a person of faith, I'm quite prepared to see that faith can and does go wrong.
As a faith leader, you probably didn't hear my introduction to the show, but I think I've struck a fairly robust line on the question of Afghans trying to seek sanctuary in the UK, and some maybe not so much seeking sanctuary, but simply seeking a better life.
Yes.
As a Catholic journalist, I look at some of the words of the Holy Father, who has said repeatedly that believers ought to be open to the idea of people moving for a better life in another part of the world, most obviously Western Europe. I just wonder whether you would, to what extent you'd agree with or disagree with my analysis.
Well, I think Christians as individuals have a responsibility for anyone in need. Whether that is refugees or whoever they may be. But that's not the same thing as the responsibility of a state. Every state, every government has a responsibility to balance the requirement to welcome people and the needs of its own population, of course. Now, this time, I feel in this context, there must be a very rapid international agreement about what to do with the flood of refugees that will undoubtedly occur. And in this, North America, of course, bears major responsibility, so does Australasia. But also, I feel those allies of the West in this matter in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They need to take. Pakistan took 5 million Afghan refugees last time around. And that's wonderful that they did that. But what about the other rich countries? What will they be doing? So this is a matter that must be addressed quite promptly.
Given your knowledge of how Pakistan works, Bishop, do you think we in the West understand the extent to which Pakistan sees Afghanistan as its sphere of influence, as its backyard, as the language they use is of its strategic depth? They look west to Afghanistan as a place of refuge because actually when they look east, they see India.
Yes, strategic depth doesn't mean that it's a place of refuge, but what they want to prevent at any cost is for India to have influence in Afghanistan, because that really would provide a kind of pincer movement. And that has been part of Pakistani policy. I think the other part, to be quite honest, has been, and this was said to me by a senior official a long time ago, he said, look, Michael, the Americans will cut and run sooner or later. We have to live with these people, this lot, he said. What do you expect us to do? So I think there's been some of that, to be quite honest. But of course, that also means that it gives Pakistan some leverage to make sure that the kind of madness that occurred with the Taliban rule last time does not happen again. And I hope that our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, and other world leaders will press Imran Khan, the Pakistani Prime Minister, to use all his influence, and he does have influence over the Taliban, to make sure that the situation does not recur, as it did last time, of widespread abuse of human freedoms and rights and even the dignity of the human person.
Bishop Michael Nazir-Ali, we appreciate your time as ever. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.